Criminals are switching their attention to smaller targets: the corner shop, the off-licence and the petrol station. For the staff, the violent attacks can cause terrible emotional damage. Vanessa Collingwood reports now on the hidden crime wave in the High Street.
Just another working day at the petrol station. A familiar sight down at the off-licence. Violent attacks and workers in fear. They've come face to face with a terrifying but hidden crime problem.
The latest retail crime survey says that the amount of crime happening in our shops has dropped. But is this the full picture? I'm going to find out what the threat of violence is like in our smaller shops and why those who work there may be increasingly vulnerable.
Now we were out the back, and I was just taking the beer to the fridge to fill it. There he is. It's off camera. We've got a blind spot in the shop. And he came in shouting, "Hurry up, I want the money." And he's very, very nervous, which is scaring me.
Wielding a machete?
Yeah. Just kept shouting and shouting. He was very nervous. I mean, it's over in seconds and he's gone, but it seems like a lifetime.
7 months later, the same store, the same assistant.
Well, we're at the back getting stock again. Look up as the door goes and you see him pull the double-barrel shotgun. And he stayed away from the cameras. And he is now making us come to the tills and making us open it.
Is that him there?
Yeah, he's behind us all the time. He's got a stocking on and you can almost make out his face. And then he makes us go into the stock room at the back while he takes the money from the tills.
Within the last year, Ria Hall has faced a machete, a gun, a knife and a sawn-off shotgun. None of the attackers has ever been caught.
How quickly did you go back to work and what was it like?
My next shift.
You're kidding?
No.
How did you manage to do that?
You get angry. The overriding force after any of these is anger. That they've done this to you, that they've put you through this, and they're still putting you through it. So you go back because you think, you're not going to beat me. And if you don't go back, they've won again. So, no, we go back.
But you've gone back and back 3 times now. Is there not going to come a point when you say,
I think I said jokingly once that I'd need to be shot not to go back. It's just the way, it's just how angry I am.
The survey records that burglary from retail premises has reduced by 50% since 1993, and there have also been reductions in robbery, in shoplifting, in criminal damage, and, very important area, in thefts by staff.
It all sounds like a success story. Problem is that the government gets its figures from the British Retail Consortium, and they largely get their figures from the major stores. But in the smaller shops, the trend is actually going in the opposite direction, and a growing number of incidents are going unreported.
There were 14,000 reported robberies in Britain's shops last year, with off-licences in the front line. At least 11,000 shop workers were assaulted and most were hurt when trying to prevent a robbery. These are the official figures, but in smaller stores, some attacks are not recorded at all. Fear of reprisals, intimidation and property damage mean many shopkeepers are reluctant to involve the police. Kirit Patel runs this convenience store in South London.
If the person who is involved is living locally and we know of him, then I would not waste police time, because by informing him to the police and him having a go at us and have to call the police again and again, I would rather settle the matter with the person who's done it there and then and finish it off.
So you would be worried about reprisals if you were to inform the police about somebody?
Yeah, because reprisals is another headache.
Most assaults on staff happen when they're trying to stop thieves. In this store, the owner dealt with theft in another way, by setting his own trap.
Having no permanent videos, etc. in place, I put my own camcorder in rather quickly in order to catch the thieves. We found two youngish people who were stealing gammon steaks at the rate of about £100 worth in 54 seconds.
With the help of the video, these two men were convicted and one was sent to prison for 4 months. In the same store, other thieves have turned violent.
We did have one occasion when a 16-year-old girl who was working for us one Saturday afternoon was threatened with a screwdriver, and he got away with £75, but after I'd kicked the screwdriver out of his hand and made him run for it a little bit.
Some attacks are particularly vicious. These attacks threw scalding coffee in the cashier's face. The attackers were later caught and convicted, but 10 months after this terrifying assault, the victim is still too upset to talk about what happened. Attacks like these show how the late opening hours have made life increasingly dangerous for those working in petrol stations.
It was like nearly closing time when we closed at 11 o'clock. 2 blokes are standing near the door and one tried to nick a biscuit, yeah? So I went out and asked him, "You did take something?" And he said, "No, I haven't taken it, yeah? You can check me and all that." I said, "Okay, leave the shop." And then there was a few coins on the side. He tried to like take them in the pocket, innit?
But he's hit you there.
Yeah, and then I started to stop him and he just hit me and they both ran away. And they took the money from the till as well.
How badly hurt were you?
Like, I just had a like cut here, you know, with this ring or something. His ring was sharp, so I just had a cut on the side. I had 3 stitches and all that as well.
But obviously quite shocked.
Yeah, I was, it's too shocking. It just happened so quick, you know.
Till snatching at petrol stations increased by 20% last year, while crime overall cost petrol retailers some £47 million.
As the financial institutions have made themselves a much tougher target, then the criminal fraternity are turning their attentions to off-licences, convenience stores, petrol retailers, and businesses basically that stay open 24 hours and 7 days a week, or stay open very late at night.
Why is it that they are so vulnerable?
Well, quite often they're in remote locations and they're not in the main traffic flow, and obviously late at night there aren't as many people around.
This security expert showed us how the thief can be thwarted. Bollards to deter ram raiders, specially protected cameras, double entry doors, and most importantly, a bulletproof screen to keep the cashiers safe. An attempted robbery was foiled at this station just 8 hours after we filmed.
So why do the figures for retail crime show a drop? On the outskirts of town, the superstores have super security. Investment like this has helped reduce the crime rate. But we've discovered this simply means that the criminals are being driven out of the big stores and further down the street.
They come alone or in pairs. Sometimes they're masked, sometimes they don't even bother to hide their faces. And frighteningly, many of these violent criminals remain at large.
Small shop robbery can be more difficult for the police to investigate. Sometimes these robbers are independent robbers, they're not always known to police, and it takes more investigation to catch these criminals.
We spoke to an assistant who was on duty in this convenience store when this happened.
Patients had just finished serving him. One bloke's grabbed him, pushed him back, told him to shut up and get down, otherwise he'll blow him away.
What's he got in his hand?
He's got looks like a black small revolver handheld gun. Patients looks like she's pressing the panic button. It's pointing the gun at her, telling her to open the tills. If you do everything right, you'll be all right. So she's going towards the first till. He's looking around to make sure everything's okay. He looks very nervous with the gun held down. Now he's lifting it up. He's got his colleague coming in saying, put the money in his bag. Hurry up about it.
Where are you at this stage?
I'm down by the pet food section near the post office. I heard all this commotion, so I've gone raced around the corner, and then I froze because I've seen two people in black balaclavas and coats, one with a gun, one with a bag, shouting out all this abuse. I couldn't exactly do nothing, so I just stood there and froze.
They didn't know you were there?
No, they did not. I know I was there. I was still hiding around the corner.
And there's you coming in?
Yeah, I've seen everyone out. I've come over to comfort patients. She started to burst up into tears, so I've gone and give her a big hug.
Despite their ordeal, the staff here were given no counselling by their employers. The government says it's tackling shop violence by putting more money into street surveillance cameras, but few of these will be installed in the remote and vulnerable areas.
What concerns us is that the investment they're making is all happening again in the city centres and edge of town and out of town. For instance, the government's investment in outside CCTV really doesn't penetrate down to the areas where our shops are located. And I think until that situation is addressed, we're going to continue to be challenged by retail crime.
Another till, another robbery, and another victim of Britain's increasing shop violence.
You're angry that they can actually do this to you and get away with it. I mean, it's over in seconds for them, but for us it just goes on and on and on. Every time you go to work, every time the door opens, it's there. Whereas they've robbed you, they've gone, they've taken the money, and they don't give it a second thought. But it's with us for the rest of our lives.
As Vanessa reported, many